offshore wind, solar. Dominion Energy is a leader in the clean energy transition. We're dedicated to providing reliable, affordable, safe, and clean energy as we support and invest in our communities in 16 states. Dominion Energy is building a clean energy future. Actions speak louder. Welcome to Actions Speak Louder, a program about Dominion Energy's projects and community support. I'm Peggy Fox, Dominion Energy's Media and Community Relations Manager in Northern Virginia. Dominion Energy is committed to sustainable, reliable, affordable, and safe energy. We're laser focused on reducing emissions and achieving our goal of net zero carbon dioxide and methane emissions by 2050. Today, you will learn about some of the organizations that have received financial support from Dominion Energy. In March, the Dominion Energy Charitable Foundation awarded $1.3 million in grants to 118 organizations working to improve natural spaces or teach about the environment. 20 of those organizations are in Northern Virginia. Today, we'll be highlighting 2 of those. So I would like to introduce Margaret Fisher. She is with Audubon at Home. So I'm sure you know the Audubon Society. Audubon at Home is a kind of a separate and related organization. Tell me about what is Margaret. First of all, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks very much.
What is Audubon at Home?
Audubon at Home is a organization of volunteers that are committed to helping people see how important it is to use their own properties to support the birds and other wildlife. And so to do that, we have volunteers, and in this case, all over Northern Virginia, that will go out to your home and walk your property with you and figure out what it is, what your goals are for your landscaping, and then help you decide what you can do to make it more habitat friendly.
Right. Now, so habitat friendly, things, plants and trees that would support birds, butterflies, bees, and pollinators, right? Things like that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That and other steps that you can take to make your property more hospitable.
Why, and people, I bet there's a growing interest in this.
There is definitely a growing interest. It's quite fascinating to watch this evolution over the last, I'd say, even just the last 10 years, where, for instance, the gardening magazines would be all about ornamental plants from other continents, and now you can't open a gardening magazine without seeing stories about locally native plants and how important they are, and public gardens that are using them. It's been great.
Well, let's talk about why it's so important to have native plants. And I mean, we've heard about invasive species, and why is it so important? Why do we need to host native plants?
Okay, so a native plant is a plant that evolved within the local ecosystem and therefore has all the intricate interactions between flora and fauna that evolved over thousands of years. If you take that plant out of context, you've removed all those interrelationships and you no longer can support any kind of wildlife, which unfortunately we have done in Northern Virginia and most of the United States by importing things like Japanese azaleas and Bradford pears and things from Europe and Asia in particular. And some of them actually have gotten invasive and escape into our natural areas and are ruining those areas. And the most importantly of all, actually, or certainly with the most land mass, is lawn, because turf grass comes from Europe also. And essentially it's from an ecosystem standpoint, it's completely sterile. Whereas if you use a native plant, it will actually support the local birds. And just to give you an example of how this works, if you're a baby bird, you have to eat insects. Even though your parents may eat seeds, you have to eat insects. That's what baby birds are made out of, mostly caterpillars.
Okay.
And caterpillars can only eat the plants that they evolved with.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So if you take away the caterpillars, let's say you have the mosquito company come and spray them.
Oh.
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing that, but
Good.
I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what happens. You remove the food for the baby birds, and that's just one example. There are many, many examples of this. The monarchs are a great example because their caterpillars can only eat milkweeds, but all the butterflies have the same kind of interaction, just with different kinds of native plants.
So yards are not good. Yards are not great for birds, just regular
Yes, but they can be made great.
Okay.
Right? If you try and use lawn where you need it, because it definitely has its purpose. You know, we can play on it and walk on it. Use it where you need it, but where you don't need it or where it's dangerous to mow, how about planting something that's native, and then you can have the best of both worlds.
You've also helped homeowners associations to plant to choose native plants for their public areas, right?
Yes.
Just what kind of plants have you advised them to use?
There are something like 300 species of native plants that are suitable for landscaping. And by the way, the Plant Nova Natives campaign has its guide on those plants.
Just hold that up more so we can get a picture of that. But keep talking about it. So that right there is our guide, right?
Right. So this is a guide put out by the Plant Nova Natives campaign, of which I'm also a volunteer. And we are trying to help people translate these concepts into action by giving them all the resources they need in order to do this, like where to find the plants and which ones to choose. Well, since you asked specifically about homeowners associations, you can have any kind of look you want with native plants. So you can have something that's very natural looking, or you can have something that's very formal looking. You can have something that you'd want as a gardener because you like working with plants, or you can just have, you know, shrubs and trees, because most people are not into necessarily gardening. They just want something that's easy.
Yeah.
And you can choose ones that are very formal looking if you like. So in the case of homeowners associations, we tend to recommend that most of their landscaping be the easy kind. So for instance, they don't need to necessarily plant, if they need a small tree, a Japanese cherry, beautiful though it is. Why not plant a dogwood, a flowering dogwood, which is a Virginia state tree, or a redbud, or one of these things that come locally and are just as beautiful and better adapted actually for this area because they evolved here. So they're used to these weather and soil conditions.
Dominion Energy has a project Plant It where we give little saplings and or seedlings, and then also saplings to schools, and we hand out the seedlings, but usually they're red buds. And I have one it's about this tall. It's very cute. I'm hoping it grows.
It should. If you just take, keep the whatever, anyone from running it over with a lawnmower, in a few years you're going to have a great tree.
Tell me about what are some of the worst invasive species that people love to plant.
Well, there are quite a few.
Yes.
Especially people love to plant certain shrubs and also ornamental grasses. So an example of that is Chinese silvergrass. You see it a lot in Northern Virginia, especially often in homeowners association entranceways. It's a popular plant for that. And then when you're driving along in the fall or the winter when everything else is brown, you can see it along the roadways, in our parks, in Dominion easements. It's really invaded there where you could be having meadow. Now these things have escaped from our properties into that area.
Wow.
And then as for shrubs, there are quite a few that are problematic, and we really hope people will avoid and even remove if they could. So burning bush would be an example of that. Nandina, let's see, Japanese spirea is getting somewhat invasive.
Yeah.
The Chinese privets are invasive. Let's just name a few. There are unfortunately several. But on the other hand, there are some beautiful shrubs such as winterberry, which if you want something that's like red in the fall, winterberry's got these beautiful red berries. It's great.
And I know we have a picture of a winterberry
plant. We do,
and you have lots of beautiful pictures of other native species, both like small plants, big plants, bushes that might go next to woods or on the side of your yard, something like that.
Yeah. So right.
What about you? So native species are better because they support wildlife. They support the butterflies and caterpillars and birds. So when you see, like I have Virginia creeper, which is good, right?
Yes, it is.
I know that English ivy is bad.
English ivy is a very good example of something that's very problematic. I mean, not only does it cover the ground and eradicate everything that's growing there normally, but it'll climb up the trees and suffocate them and bring down the trees.
People think English ivy looks so pretty on a tree, but it's terrible.
Yeah. If you've got a patch of that, it'd take a little while to get rid of it, so we recommend people cut it at the base, so at least it's not going to kill the tree in the meantime until you can get the English ivy out. It also is a nice place to breed mosquitoes, by the way.
Oh boy, there you go. Well, I was going to say about Virginia creeper that I noticed a lot of like bugs eat it. But things eat it, like there's holes in it.
Yeah.
And you told me last time we chatted that that is a good thing.
Indeed, right. The native insects that eat the native plants, they're not going to do enough damage to be a problem. So it's something to welcome and not get worried about.
So to learn more about native species, the best idea is to get a hold of this book or to go to your website, right?
Yes, for that purpose, plantnovanatives.org. Is where you'd want to go. We're kind of the go-to place for the information about the natives.
You know, a lot of people, though, one thing they get very frustrated with are deer eating their plants. What do you do about that?
Well, we have on our website a search app where you can find ones that are relatively deer resistant. That's about 40% of the plants, the native plants that are listed. Ferns, for example, are an easy example. The deer just are very unlikely to ever eat a fern. But there are many other things that are relatively deer resistant. And then there are other steps you can take. I mean, if you have the opportunity to put a fence around your yard, which we did, it really helps a lot.
It helps. They can still get over it if it's
well, it has to be tall enough. It's a tall fence for this purpose.
I just found out that you are a retired doctor, a retired rheumatologist.
I am. Or was.
Which you're a retired rheumatologist, and but it sounds like a great place to volunteer, maybe for anybody, but particularly if you have some time and you like the outdoors and you can learn about plants.
It's been fascinating. It's just been the happiest retirement for that reason.
Wonderful.
You know, everywhere you look, there are plants, and when you start to learn about them, and you say, "Oh, there it is. It really is a native plant. It's growing in the woods." And now I know what it's called. It makes the nature experience really more fun.
So native plants will take hold easier. We still have to water them.
You still have to water them, yes. But they don't need fertilizer.
Wow.
You know, if you buy the right size, it doesn't need pruning. And it shouldn't need watering after it gets established if you've picked one that's designed for that kind of
So if I were someone who had a large grass backyard and wants to minimize the grass and maximize native plants, how do you go about starting that process?
Well, it just depends on how much you're into this. If you're someone who wants just to do something really quickly that'll do a huge amount of good, plant a native tree in the middle of your yard. Because over time, as it gets big, it will cool your house, cool the whole neighborhood, and it will shade out that grass. And you can plant other things around. So ideally, you'd want to plant some other things around it.
Right.
And they say shade gardens are the garden of the future because it's going to be too hot.
And trees are so much better than grass.
Trees are way better than grass. Trees support the most caterpillars by far. So if you want to help birds, trees, and native trees, non-natives won't do it. The oak trees in particular are very valuable in this regard, but any native tree is going to be good. But if you don't have room for a tree, shrubs, maybe small trees are great. But if you're into gardening, well, that's just easy. It's like any other gardening, really. You just go to the garden center and pick up the perennials.
Excellent. So Dominion Energy recently gave Audubon at Home a $15,000 grant. Tell us about what that money is being used for.
Yes, we're so happy to have that grant because we were able to offer 6 mini grants to community associations so they could re-landscape their entranceways with native plants. I'm talking about those entranceways that have got the big sign with the community name and usually has some shrubs and maybe some of those invasive grasses. So they're going to turn it into semi-formal looking or even formal looking plantings that we hope will inspire the neighbors to want to do the same on their own property.
Well, that is excellent. Yes, I can see that has a wide-reaching effect. So that is wonderful. Thank you so much for everything you've been doing. And Margaret Fisher, I really appreciate you coming on and telling us more about Audubon at Home.
Thank you.
So we really very much appreciate our organizations and all the great work they're doing for the environment.